I glared at Eli across the kitchen table, my hands clenched around my mug of lukewarm coffee. What do you mean, I can't stay here anymore? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Eli wouldn't meet my eyes. He fiddled with his phone, his jaw clenched. You heard me, Nina. This isn't working. You need to leave. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. We'd been married for 5 years, and now, with our newborn daughter Sophie sleeping peacefully in the next room, he was kicking me out? Eli, you can't be serious, I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. We have a baby. We're supposed to be a family. He finally looked up, his eyes cold. A family? Is that what you call this? You're never home, always at the office. And when you are here, you're too tired to even look at me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'm working to support us, Eli. Your writing barely covers the groceries. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Eli's face darkened. Get out, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Take the baby and go to your parents. I can't do this anymore. Tears stung my eyes as I stood up. Fine, I said, my voice shaking. But this isn't over, Eli. You can't just throw away our marriage like this. I walked to Sophie's room, my heart pounding. As I lifted her from her crib, she stirred and opened her eyes, looking up at me with perfect trust. I held her close, breathing in her sweet baby scent. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered. Mommy's got you. As I packed a bag with shaking hands, I heard Eli's phone buzz. He answered it, his voice suddenly warm and cheerful. Hi, Mom. Yeah, everything's fine here. I froze, realization dawning. Of course. Donna. My mother-in-law had never approved of me, always criticizing my choices, my career, my parenting. And now it seemed she had finally gotten what she wanted. With Sophie in my arms and a hastily packed bag over my shoulder, I walked out of our bedroom. Eli was still on the phone, laughing at something Donna had said. This isn't over, I said again, my voice stronger this time. Eli looked up, startled. I won't let you and your mother destroy our family. As I walked out the door, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I would fight for my daughter, for my marriage, and for myself. And Eli and Donna would soon learn that they had picked the wrong woman to mess with. I stood in my parents' kitchen, bouncing Sophie gently in my arms as I heated her bottle. Past week had been a blur of sleepless nights and tearful phone calls with Grace. My best friend had been my rock, offering support and a listening ear as I tried to make sense of my shattered marriage. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. I heard my mother answer, followed by a familiar voice that made my blood run cold. Where is she? I want to see my granddaughter. Donna. Of course she'd show up unannounced. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. As I walked into the living room, Donna's eyes locked onto Sophie. There's my precious girl, she cooed, reaching for the baby. I instinctively pulled back. Donna, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. What are you doing here? Her smile faltered, replaced by a look of disdain. I'm here to see my granddaughter, of course, and to talk some sense into you. This little tantrum of yours needs to stop. I felt my face flush with anger. Tantrum? Your son kicked me out of our home, with our newborn baby. Donna waved her hand dismissively. Eli told me what happened. You've been neglecting him, focused only on your career. A good wife knows her place. My place? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It's the 21st century, Donna. I have a right to a career and a family. You think you're better than us just because you bring in the money? Donna's words stung. I felt my face flush even hotter. Donna, that's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, she snapped. You've always looked down on Eli, on our family. Well, let me tell you something, Missy. A child needs her father. You're being selfish, keeping Sophie away from Eli. I took a deep breath, fighting to stay calm. Eli is welcome to see Sophie anytime. He's the one who hasn't reached out. Donna's is narrowed. Because you've hurt him deeply. He's struggling, and instead of supporting him, you abandoned him. I couldn't hold back anymore. I abandoned him? He kicked us out. And where was your concern when he was ignoring his own daughter, too caught up in his insecurities to be a father? Donna gasped, her hand flying to her chest in mock outrage. How dare you? Eli is a wonderful father. It's you who's the problem. Mark my words, Nina. If you don't come to your senses and go back home where you belong, you'll regret it. I'll make sure of it. With that, she turned on her heel and stormed out, leaving me shaken and furious. As the door slammed behind her, Sophie began to wail, overwhelmed by the tension in the room. I held my daughter close, my mind racing. Donna's threat hung in the air, and I knew this was far from over. Whatever she and Eli were planning, I had to be prepared. For Sophie's sake and for my own, I couldn't let them win. I never thought I'd be relieved to return to work, but as I walked into the office that Monday morning, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Here I was, Nina Carson, marketing executive, not just a new mother struggling with a crumbling marriage. My relief was short-lived. As I settled at my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from Eli. "We need to talk. Coming over tonight." My stomach churned. I hadn't seen Eli since Donna's visit 2 weeks ago. What could he want? The day dragged on, my mind racing with possibilities. By the time I got home, I was a bundle of nerves. Eli arrived just after 8, looking haggard and unkempt. "Where's Sophie?" he asked, peering around the living room. "Asleep," I replied curtly. "What do you want, Eli?" He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I've been thinking, Nina. I want us to try again. For Sophie's sake." I stared at him, incredulous. "Try again? After everything that's happened?" "I know I messed up," he said, his voice low. "But we can fix this. We have to, for our daughter." I felt a flicker of hope, quickly extinguished by suspicion. "What brought this on, Eli? Last time we spoke, you could barely look at me." He shifted uncomfortably. "I've been talking to Mom. She made me see how important family is." My heart sank. Of course, Donna was behind this. "And what exactly did your mother say?" Eli's expression hardened. "She reminded me of my responsibilities as a husband and father, that I need to step up and be the man of the house." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The man of the house? Eli, it's not 1950. We're supposed to be partners. "That's not how it works, Nina," he snapped. "You're my wife. You need to support me, not undermine me with your career and your attitude." I felt a surge of anger. My attitude? You kicked me out, Eli. You abandoned your daughter. "I made a mistake," he said, his voice rising. "But I'm trying to fix it. Why can't you see that?" "Because nothing's changed," I retorted. "You're still the same insecure man who can't handle his wife's success." Eli's face contorted with rage. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Well, let me tell you something, Nina. You're nothing without me. You're just a guest in this house. Act like one." His words cut deep. Tears filled my eyes as I stared at this stranger wearing my husband's face. "How can you say that? I'm your wife." "Not for long if you don't shape up," he snarled. "I'm giving you one last chance, Nina. Come home, be a proper wife and mother, or I'll make sure you never see Sophie again."
As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, my body shaking with sobs. How had it come to this? And what was I going to do now? I stared at my phone, my finger hovering over Eli's name. After our last confrontation, I'd been a mess of emotions, anger, fear, and a tiny flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could salvage our marriage. For Sophie's sake, I had to try one last time. With a deep breath, I pressed call. "Nina?" Eli's voice was surprisingly soft. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "For real this time. No accusations, no threats. Just talk. There was a long pause before he replied, okay. Come home, Nina. I promise things will be different. His words sounded sincere, but I felt a pang of doubt. Could I trust him again? I arrived at our house. Was it still ours? With Sophie in tow. Eli opened the door, his face a mix of hope and apprehension. As soon as he saw Sophie, his eyes lit up. There's my girl, he cooed, reaching for her. I hesitated for a moment before handing her over. The sight of Eli cradling our daughter made my heart ache. This was how it should have been all along. We sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken words. Eli bounced Sophie on his knee, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. I've been thinking, he started, his voice low. I know I've been difficult. I was scared, Nina. Scared of failing as a father, as a husband. But seeing you walk out that door, it woke me up. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to. But the memory of his harsh words, his threats, still stung. Eli, I dash. Please, let me finish, he interrupted gently. I've started therapy. I'm working on my issues, trying to be better. For you, for Sophie, for us. Tears pricked my eyes. This was the Eli I'd fallen in love with, vulnerable, honest, trying. But then he continued, I think it would be best if you took a break from work. Just for a while, to focus on our family. And just like that, the illusion shattered. What? I gasped, unable to believe what I was hearing. It's just temporary, Eli rushed to explain. Mom thinks Dash. Your mother. I cut him off, my voice rising. Eli, this isn't about your mother. This is about us. His face hardened. Mom's just trying to help. She knows what's best for our family. I stood up, my hands shaking. No, Eli. This isn't what's best for our family. This is about your insecurities, your mother's interference. I won't give up my career, my independence, to soothe your ego. Eli's expression darkened. If you can't prioritize our family, then maybe we don't have one anymore. His words hit me like a physical blow. In that moment, I realized that no matter how much I wanted to believe in us, in Eli, some things were irreparably broken. With tears streaming down my face, I took Sophie from his arms. You're right, Eli. We don't have a family anymore. Not like this. As I walked out the door for what I knew would be the last time, I felt a strange mix of grief and determination. It was time to start a new chapter, for me, for Sophie, and for the future I knew we deserved. Sophie's piercing cry jolted me awake for the third time that night. I stumbled out of bed, exhausted and on edge. As I reached the nursery, I found Eli already there, his face twisted in frustration. Can't you shut her up? He snapped, glaring at me. I bit back a retort, focusing on soothing our daughter. She's teething, Eli. It's not her fault. He threw his hands up in exasperation. I have a deadline tomorrow. I can't work like this. I rocked Sophie gently, fighting to keep my voice calm. I have a presentation in the morning too. We're both tired, but Dash. But nothing, Eli interrupted. I'm the head of this household, and you need to respect that. Take her downstairs so I can sleep. My heart sank. This was not the man I married. Eli, we're supposed to be partners. You can't just Dash. I said take her downstairs, he shouted, causing Sophie to wail even louder. Tears stung my eyes as I carried our daughter out of the room. As I settled on the living room couch, my phone buzzed with a text from Grace. How are things? Still on for lunch tomorrow. I hesitated, then typed back, can we meet earlier? I need to talk. The next day, I poured out everything to Grace over coffee. The sleepless nights, Eli's growing resentment, his verbal abuse. Grace listened, her face a mix of concern and anger. Nina, this isn't healthy. For you or Sophie? I know, I whispered, fighting back tears. But I don't know what to do. I want Sophie to have a family. She has a family, Grace said firmly. You. And she needs you to be strong and safe. As if on cue, my phone rang. It was Donna. I answered, putting it on speaker. Nina, dear, Donna's saccharine voice grated on my nerves. Eli told me about last night. You really need to be more supportive. A good wife, Dash. A good wife. I interrupted, my patience finally snapping. What about a good husband, Donna? Or a good father? Now, listen here, Dash. No, you listen, I said, surprising myself with my firmness. I'm done being the scapegoat for Eli's insecurities. I'm done with your interference. This ends now. I hung up, my hands shaking. Grace reached across the table, squeezing my hand. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of fear and determination. I'm going to fight. For myself and for Sophie. We deserve better than this. As I stood up to leave, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be tough, but for the first time in months, I felt hope. It was time to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my future. And nothing, not Eli, not Donna, not my own fears, would stand in my way. I walked into our house, my heart pounding. After my conversation with Grace, I knew what I had to do. Sophie was with my parents, safe from the storm I was about to unleash. Eli was in his study, hunched over his laptop. He barely looked up as I entered. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He sighed, irritated. Can it wait? I'm working. No, it can't. I stepped forward, steeling myself. This isn't working, Eli. Our marriage, this situation, it's toxic. He finally turned to face me, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the verbal abuse, the constant criticism, your mother's interference. I can't live like this anymore. We can't raise Sophie in this environment. Eli stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. So what, you're just giving up? Running away when things get tough? I'm not running away, I said, standing my ground. I'm facing reality. We're not partners anymore, Eli. We're adversaries. His face contorted with rage. This is all your fault. If you just quit your job like Mom suggested, Dash. Like your mother suggested? I interrupted, my own anger flaring. This is exactly the problem, Eli. You're a grown man, but you let your mother dictate our lives. Don't you dare talk about my mother that way, he shouted, advancing towards me. I stood my ground, even as fear coursed through me. Or what, Eli? Will you kick me out again? Threatened to take Sophie away. He stopped short, a flicker of shame crossing his face before it hardened again. Pack your things and leave, he demanded. But something in me had snapped. All the fear, all the doubt, all the pain of the past months crystallized into a burning determination. I felt a surge of anger and resolve. No, Eli, I said, my voice low and firm. You need to leave. He stared at me, shocked. What? This is my house too. I've put up with your behavior, your mother's interference, for far too long. I'm done. If anyone's leaving, it's you. Eli's face turned red with fury. You can't do this. I'm the man of this house. No, you're not, I retorted. You're a boy hiding behind his mother's skirts. A real man wouldn't treat his wife this way, wouldn't neglect his child. He raised his hand, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he might strike me. But he stopped, his arm trembling in midair. Get out, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Get out now, or I'll call the police. We stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, without a word, Eli grabbed his keys and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. As the sound echoed through the empty house, I sank to the floor, my body shaking with sobs of relief, fear, and a strange sense of triumph. It was over. But as I sat there, I realized this was just the beginning. The real battle, for Sophie, for my future, for my self-respect, was only just beginning. My hands trembled as I clutched the manila envelope containing the separation papers. I'd spent the last week consulting with a lawyer, making plans, and steeling my resolve. Now, standing outside my house, I took a deep breath and knocked. Eli opened the door, his eyes widening in surprise. Nina? What are you doing here? We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Can I come in? He stepped aside, his gaze falling to the envelope in my hands. What's that? I walked to the living room, memories of happier times flashing through my mind. How had we ended up here? Separation papers, I said, turning to face him. Eli's face paled, his voice wavering as he repeated, "Separation papers?" I nodded, my gaze steady. "I can't stay married to you anymore, Eli." He staggered back as if I'd struck him. "You can't be serious." "What about Sophie? Our family?" "This is for Sophie," I said firmly. "She deserves better than what we've become." Eli's shock quickly morphed into anger. "This is ridiculous. You can't just throw away our marriage." "Our marriage?" I laughed bitterly. "You threw it away long ago, Eli. With every insult, every time you chose your mother over me, every moment you neglected Sophie." He flinched at my words, but his eyes hardened. "You're not taking my daughter away from me." "I'm not trying to," I said, fighting to keep my voice calm. "But things need to change. We need to be better, for Sophie's sake." Just then, the front door burst open. Donna stormed in, her face a mask of fury. "What have you done?" she shrieked at me. I felt a surge of anger. "This is a private conversation, Donna. You need to leave." "I will not," she spat. "You're tearing this family apart." Eli stood there, looking lost between his mother and me. In that moment, I saw our entire marriage laid bare, Eli, forever caught between us, never truly standing on his own. "No, Donna," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You tore this family apart. With your constant interference, your manipulation. But it ends now." I turned to Eli, who was staring at me with a mixture of fear and awe. "You have a choice to make, Eli. Right here, right now. Are you going to be a husband and father, or are you going to remain a child hiding behind your mother?" The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Eli looked from me to his mother, his face a battlefield of emotions. I don't know," he whispered, and in that moment I knew. I picked up the separation papers and held them out to him. "Then I've made the choice for you," I said, my heart breaking even as I felt a surge of strength. "It's over, Eli. For real this time." As I walked out the door, leaving Eli and Donna in stunned silence, I felt a strange mix of grief and liberation. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in years, I was walking it on my own terms. 6 months after handing Eli the separation papers, I stood in my new apartment, watching Sophie toddle across the living room. Her giggles filled the air, a sound that once seemed impossible in the tense atmosphere of our old home. "I'm happier than ever," I said to Grace, who was visiting for our weekly coffee catch-up. "We have a bright future ahead of us." Grace smiled, but her eyes held a hint of concern. "And Eli? How's he handling everything?" I sighed, thinking of our last encounter. Eli had shown up, unannounced, looking haggard and remorseful. He'd apologized, admitted to starting therapy, and asked for another chance. For a moment, I'd felt a flicker of the love we once shared. But then I remembered the pain, the constant belittling, Donna's toxic influence. I knew we could never go back. "He's struggling," I admitted. "But he's finally standing on his own 2 feet. We're working on co-parenting, and he's been consistent with his visitations." A knock at the door interrupted us. I opened it to find Mark, Eli's brother, standing there with an uncomfortable expression. "Nina, I'm sorry to barge in like this, but it's Mom. She's in the hospital. Eli's there, and he's asking for you." My heart raced as I rushed to the hospital, Sophie in tow. Despite everything, I couldn't ignore this call for help. I found Eli in the waiting room, his head in his hands. When he looked up, I saw a changed man, humbled, vulnerable, and for the first time in years, truly present. "Nina," he said, his voice cracking. "Thank you for coming." I didn't know who else to call. As we sat there, waiting for news about Donna, something shifted between us. Not a rekindling of romance, but a quiet understanding. We talked, really talked, about our past, our mistakes, our hopes for Sophie. Hours later, as dawn broke, the doctor emerged with good news. Donna would recover. As relief washed over us, Eli turned to me. "I'm sorry," he said, his eyes filled with genuine remorse. "For everything. You were right to leave." "I see that now." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm sorry too, Eli. We both made mistakes." As we stood to leave, Eli gently touched my arm. Nina, I know things can never be the same between us. But I want you to know I'm working on myself. For Sophie and for me. I want to be a father she can be proud of. Watching him walk away, I felt a sense of closure I never thought possible. The anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long began to fade, replaced by hope for a future where we could coexist peacefully for our daughter's sake. Back home, I held Sophie close, marveling at her innocence and the possibilities that lay ahead. The road hadn't been easy, and there would be challenges ahead. But for the first time in years, I felt truly free. Free to be myself, to be the mother Sophie deserved, and to embrace a future filled with promise and self-respect. As Sophie drifted off to sleep in my arms, I whispered, "We did it, little one. We're going to be just fine." And in that moment, I knew it was true.